Spiral, dial. Sci-fi with a soundscape.
Jessica's feet seemed to move against her will, carrying her down into the concert hall. The air bore the smell of incense. The animals had vanished. All that remained was the path before her, a thick velvet carpet leading to a row of snowy white hammocks. Her mind seemed oddly blank. She was sure there was something she was meant to be doing, something important, but she couldn't think what it was. It kept slipping from her consciousness, just out of reach. She lifted her foot and placed it in front of her. Each step seemed heavier and heavier, the carpet so soft and inviting that she wished she could remain in one spot and sink down into the depths of the ship. Just as lifting her feet became nearly impossible, she saw a hammock unfurl to her right side. She perched on it, grateful for the rest. A tumbler full of purple fluid lay on a small wooden table to her left. Beyond the table, another hammock, then another, all of them tightly swaddled, their inhabitants invisible. Was she the very last person to take her seat? Nervous, she felt compelled to drink. Lifting her glass, the stage caught her attention for the first time. 3 hooded figures emerged from the shadows, and as they did so, she felt an almost imperceptible low rumble in her chest. The hammock itself seemed to tense and relax in response to the sound. That sense of excitement before something momentous begins flooding through her with the purple fluid. And she was thirsty, terribly thirsty. She lifted the glass and drained every last drop. She felt suddenly peaceful, as if she must lie down. Curling up into the hammock, it folded itself around her, wrapping her in a warm blanket. The low rumble climbed higher and higher, and the hammock vibrated with it. It was almost as if the strands of the hammock each tightened and relaxed to their own individual note, so that each chord of the music squeezed different sections of her body. As the chords progressed, the strands of the hammock solidified, then fragmented in waves. She could feel tentacles wrapping themselves around her body, expanding and thickening with every note. The music grew louder and louder. She opened her eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of the stage, but could only see shadows and haze before a soft band tightened around her eyes, completely obscuring her vision. She lifted her left hand to brush it out of the way, and as she did so, a hammock strand wrapped firmly around her wrist and pulled it downwards. She brushed it off with her right hand, lifting both arms up firmly. This time the strands whipped around her wrists and pinned them to her sides. She pulled against her restraints but found herself unable to move. Kicking and struggling, she tried to shake the hammock off, but the strands only grew tighter and tighter on her skin. As the music rose and fell, the strands of the hammock vibrated against her, forcing her to relax despite herself. She knew that she was being restrained against her will, but she could not help but enjoy it. A soft voice seems to whisper directly in her ear. "Become one with the music," it said. "Relax, relax." Allow the sound to seep into you, to possess you, to enter you. As the voice repeated itself over and over again, she found herself powerless to resist. The hammock both restrained her and held her, pulling her legs apart before it coalesced into a human figure above her, pushing down, reaching between her legs. Horrified, she felt a hammock tentacle emerge against her thigh, getting larger and larger as the music became louder and louder. It started rubbing itself against her clitoris. She became aroused despite herself, pushing herself against the tentacle, hoping to find some form of release. And then the tentacle entered her. Her body froze. Instead of warmth, she felt cold. A cold, foreign object inside her. Instead of pleasure, only pain. Taking a deep breath, the scent of incense seemed to disperse in a moment. She tasted the disguised odors of excrement and dried blood and gagged, and yet the hammock still held her. She was unable to move. The tentacle started to thrust in and out. The pain was agonizing. The music seemed to distort, its sound becoming foreign and hostile, twisted rhythms and atonal melodies cutting straight through her abdomen. Just as she felt she could no longer bear it, everything fell quiet. She heard a still, small voice inside her form a bubble. She drew every ounce of energy inside her, gathering it together into one focused point, and let the bubble form, visualizing it expanding outwards until her whole body was encased in it. As it grew, she could feel it coming into contact with the tip of the tentacle. She braced herself, preparing for the bubble to crack, but it held. The tentacle could not breach it. As she expanded the bubble, the tentacle withdrew, spreading and reforming to attack elsewhere. She felt the hammock form itself and reform itself on the bubble's surface. It tightened and loosened, and she felt it must surely crush her, but the bubble remained strong. Every time the hammock relaxed, she pushed her energy outwards against it until she felt the strands straining with every breath she took. The music itself was only a faint echo of what it had been outside the bubble. She could feel the vibration and distortion, but it no longer cut through her as it had when she was outside. She pushed again and again, feeling the hammock strain until crack! First one strand snapped, then the next, then the next. One after the other, her restraints were breached until she found herself floating free in the bubble, lying horizontal in a great void. Still, she was unable to see. Opening her eyes, she saw only blue, before a sharp sensation between her eyes shattered her concentration. The bubble fragmented around her, and she was falling into nothingness.